When I created this channel, I wasn't sure what I was going to talk about. And over all these years, and it's been years, I've come to a conclusion that basically I have three topics, basically. One is education. So I discover certain things. I want to share what I've learned. And I've talked about a lot of things over the years. And I think that I have helped here and there. Sometimes maybe it's just a little bit of fun or whatever. But in general terms, I think that I have helped. Then another piece is entertainment. Entertainment comes in many different forms. For instance, I've told some stories about certain things that have happened in my life. And I've told some stories about just, general things. And it makes me laugh. I hate to say that, but I'm probably my best audience because I laugh at stuff I say all the time. I tend to believe that if you can laugh at your own stories and your own jokes and whatever, then, you're not leading the worst life in the world. For those of you who remember Red Skelton, and I have a feeling a lot of you won't, but I bet Frank does if Frank watches this. Red Skelton was a comedian. He did movies. He had a TV show for the longest time. And one of the things he was known for is that he laughed at every one of his jokes. And people loved that about him. So he wasn't putting on any pretenses, and I try not to either. And the final thing is opinion. So I've given opinions about different types of movies and different types of music. And the last video I did, it was an opinion on people who support the Orange Menace. Yeah, I'm still calling him that. And now I'm going to have an opinion about something else. Because one of those things about having an opinion about something is that sometimes people are going to be mad, not necessarily because of the topic, but because you didn't explain yourself properly. And sometimes you just have to take that chance. The thing about this chance I'm taking is that I waited 2 weeks before I decided to address this topic. So it was 2 weeks ago when Hamas, which is a terrorist organization in the Middle East, decided to attack Israel, and in a very brutal and horrific way. I don't support terrorism. I don't know anybody who's not a terrorist who supports terrorism. We've had terrorism in this country, and we certainly don't support any of the kind of stuff that those people do in general terms, and it's happened in other countries. And in this particular instance, nobody saw it coming. I guess, in my own opinion, I always just assumed that Israel would have always had protection at the borders and, would have been looking out for things like this. But obviously that didn't happen. And it was horrific. And it was even more horrific than you can imagine, because when we first heard about it, all we heard was that they were attacking Israel at just one certain point. And then we heard there was a music festival that was going on, and people from all over the world had shown up for this music festival, and they broke in there and they captured a lot of people. They killed some people, and then they took some people hostage. These folks, for the most part, they had nothing to do with anything else. Like I said, people were there from all over the world. There were people from the United States who were there. And there was just no regard for law at all. They killed children, women and children and men, and they just did a whole lot of mess. And then Israel did what I would have expected. As a matter of fact, I called it, and it certainly happened. They went on the attack, and they started bombing Palestine. And it was horrific. I expected that, though. When something happened in the United States, yes, we waited at least a month or so or whatever, but then we went on a major attack. Not by ourselves, by the way. We went with the British and Australians and other folks in other countries, and we went to major war. And it was not pretty. And then we went after Iran 2 years after that, which is still one of those up and down kind of things, but still, you expect some kind of retaliation when you have the forces to do it. And around this country, we had some people who decided that they wanted to make their thoughts known. And, there's nothing wrong with that. But it's how they did it. and the consternation they caused. And it's on both sides. Some people supported Israel. Some people supported Palestine. Some people supported Hamas. There were other kinds of things, and it got ugly. And after all these years, I've learned that sometimes you need to take a step back and wait, because if it's something that doesn't specifically injure you, you deserve to have an opinion, but you need to be smart about it or cautious about it and how you do it. And that's what this is for me today. I think that Hamas is a horrible organization, and I don't have any remorse for them. What makes it worse is that they basically live in a lot of the same areas that Palestinians live in. So, in other words, they don't have their own encampment. I mean, at least Osama bin Laden had his own encampment somewhere else, so that when Afghanistan was under attack, they all went somewhere, so that they didn't have to, I can't even remember what they called it, but when all the other countries decided we're going in there, and they did, they didn't have to sit there and keep bombing and attacking all these cities in Afghanistan. That, you could say that was courageous. You could say that it was a little bit of ethical, that Osama bin Laden and the rest of them went in hidden caves. You could call it cowardly. I'm not going to call it cowardly, because how were they going to put up with everything else? But they left so that Afghanistans could at least have a chance towards peace. We see what has happened there now, but what you going to do about that? But at least that happened. Well, Hamas basically has their headquarters right there in the middle of Palestine. I think that's unfair. We have that kind of thing that happens here in the United States also, but our laws are a little bit different. We know who the terrorist groups are. I'm not going to mention any of them. They will show their faces at some point. Y'all will see it again, and some of you will say, that's not a terrorist organization. Trust me, they're a terrorist organization. But, when you've got something like that, Israel is put in a bad spot because they're going to retaliate. And it gets ugly. They bombed some hospitals. They did some other stuff. I don't think that anyone can agree with that type of thing, because now you're going after children and women and, doctors. That's a bad thing also. But like I said, anyone who didn't think that was coming doesn't understand how this works. This is how it's always worked. It's worked in that part of the world since the 60s. So if you didn't know that was coming, y'all either don't know your history or you're too young to know the history. But, this is not one of those kind of things where there's one side that deserves more, I'll say, support than the other. I mean, you have to support Israel. I think they've done some stupid things over the last few years, and the orange guy kind of helped. That's just my opinion. But in essence, they're a country that was actually created after World War II, when the Allied forces decided that we're going to make a Jewish state based on what Hitler did, and we're going to put it right here. And that's been a horrible idea ever since. I'm not saying they didn't deserve to have a homeland. I'm not necessarily saying that maybe that wasn't the area that they should have put it in specifically. I will just say that someone didn't quite think that one through properly, and it's caused nothing but distress for almost 80 years. So, you have stuff like that. You have stuff over here where, like I said, there's been massive protests. I think New York City did it right. I can't say that I've had tons of good stuff I've said about Mayor Adams in New York City, but this one he handled right. I know that there's been some people, students, at colleges that have written certain things, and they've, signed a whole bunch of different things. And some of them have been kicked out of college. Some of them have lost jobs that they thought they had until they decided to make everything public. And then they lost those jobs. Some of them don't think that's fair. Sometimes consequences aren't fair, but consequences are consequences. And I've been one of those people who always believes that if you're going to have an opinion, you got to be ready that someone else isn't going to like it. But in general, it's how you deliver it. And, you just have to have some kind of balance when it doesn't affect you. Now, does it affect some people in this country? Absolutely. It's affected a lot of Jewish people. It's affected a whole lot of Arab people. This is not anything that's easy. And it's not going to be the last time this happens. And that's a shame. I think it would be a wonderful thing if all of the countries over there could have their own type of United Nations thing where they sit down and they start discussing some of these things. I don't think it's going to happen because it hasn't really happened in all these years. But I'm kind of remembering when, oh my God, I can't even remember the names. I remember Arafat. I think that's what we call him. And Begin. They at least got together. They had some conversations. We weren't really sure how that was going to go, but they had a little bit of peace for a little bit of while. But I don't know that the king of Jordan, the leaders of Yemen, the leaders of Egypt, I don't know if the folks from Iran, well, okay, we know that Iran didn't have anything with it. Iraq certainly didn't. But, they should have some kind of conversations. Even if they decide to go to the United Nations facility and have a conversation there. You can't solve anything by not trying to have conversations. And you're not going to totally agree on almost anything. But at least if you can open communications, there's a possibility that you can bring some kind of peace. You can make some kind of deals so that you just kind of loosen some of the tension and some of the anger and some of the pain and hurt and the vitriol, and give people a chance to live a peaceful life, especially if you're trying to negotiate on those people. Now, if you go in and you are inflexible and you decide you want everything and you don't want to give anything to anyone else, it's not going to work. And y'all are going to be fighting in wars for the next 50 to 100 years. I don't think anybody wants that except the terrorists. And that's a shame. But that's just how it works. So, I don't know if this is like what some people would look at or think about as a true opinion, because I haven't taken a side on this. And I don't think that every opinion needs someone to take one side. This, I almost hate to say this, but it's the truth. This really isn't my fight. It doesn't mean I don't have my opinion or my ideas, but this one isn't my fight. But I know how I felt September 11th, 2001. I know how I felt that day. I know how I felt basically for 4 or 5 days. I wanted to kill people. And I'm not a killer. I don't have a gun. It's not my thing, but I was mad. And if a lot of other people got killed at that time on behalf of the United States, yeah, I'd have said, kill them all. And I'm glad that it only lasted 5 days, because even though I was still upset every year because of what happened, and even though I felt that there needed to be more retribution than what we gave, I found some peace. I didn't fully get over it for about 15 or 16 years, by the way, but I felt some kind of peace. The United States and its allied forces went in, did what they were supposed to do, tried to find some kind of peace, and there was some kind of peace for a long time. That's all I have. I'd like to know what your opinions are on this, and that's it. I mean, one of the reasons I decided to focus in on myself more today than other days is because I didn't want to like move my hands too much. I still think I did, but hopefully you didn't see it most of the time. Anyway, that's all I have. Let me hear your opinion. Y'all take care.